To which we now add the question of the sustainability of the planet. Because just as surely as the issue of social justice and the issue of economic prosperity cannot be seen as mutually exclusive or as enemies of one another, the question of sustainability has to be added to the mix so that we understand that if we are economically prosperous and at the same time being successful in tackling some of the underlying causes of poverty and injustice in our society, but we're doing it in a way that's continuing to pollute the planet and continuing to make us unsustainable, then we're in deeper trouble than we were before. And so we have to find a way, to coin the phrase that our leader has made so well known, we have to find a way to become richer, fairer, and greener all at the same time. And we have to break down the silos in government. We have to break down the differences between federal and provincial governments. We have to break down the barriers between the levels of government and public policy. We have to break all these things down and start talking to Canadians about the fact that the key to a successful public policy is this whole issue of the right balance, the right understanding that all these things have to go together. In our system of government, the one area of public policy that everyone understands governments do is in the area of taxation. We all understand that much of what politics is all about is who gets what, when, where, and how. It's all about who's raising money and how is money being raised for the public good and how is money being spent for the public good. It's extremely simple because the premise behind it is we have to bring these three things together. We have to have a set of policies that are going to make us more economically successful as a country. We have to have a set of policies that are going to make us more socially just as a country. And we have to have a set of policies that are deeply sustainable, that are going to contribute to the sustainability of our lives in the community, that are going to make our lives more sustainable in our cities, make our lives more sustainable in our relationship with nature, make our lives more sustainable as a planet that is at risk of polluting itself to the point of real deterioration in the quality of life on the planet. The scientific community, and I know there are many people here who have a much greater claim to know about this than I do, but the scientific community that I've been reading and following over the last 15 years are telling us that we have a window of about 25 years. We have a window in which we, as a planet, can either start to steer things in a different direction, or in which we will have reached the point where we will have irremediably damaged the climate of the planet in such a way that the cost in human life and the cost to people will be simply unacceptable. When we talk about the shift that's required, it's a very simple shift. The shift is to reduce tax on income, to reduce tax on savings, to reduce tax on investment, and to reduce tax on business profitability, and to shift the burden of taxation on to pollution and the reduction of pollution. It is not a complicated proposition. It really isn't. As Canadians, we also have to talk about what do we owe each other? What do we owe one another as citizens? What do we owe to future generations? What is it that we owe one another in terms of the things we need to do together on behalf of the public good? The approach behind the program that was announced by Mr. Dion in June is something that when we talked about it over the past year, I can tell you I've been very passionate in advocating the approach that we're taking because it makes such good sense. I know that when Mr. Dion was out here earlier, he was talking to a lot of people here, and I'm sure many of you heard him, and we're giving him advice about how it could deal with. It isn't just an environmental policy. It isn't just a policy about climate change. It's a policy that in a sense deals with everything, which is what in government you have to do. I would often say to people who would come to see me that they were passionate advocates for something, and I would say, well, what about this? Or what about the person who argues over here? What about the issue on this side of the spectrum? They say, well, I hadn't thought about that. Or more often they would say, well, I don't really care about that. To which I would say, well, I'm sitting in the Premier's chair, I have to care about it. I can't just ignore other interests which are out there, which are concerns. So as we get into this campaign, and this is the last thing I'm going to say since I am a politician and we are involved in the real world here, there may well be an election very soon. I don't know whether there will or there won't be. But what I do know is that the choice in the next election, to me, is very clear. And again, just as the tax shift is not difficult, the choice for me is not very difficult. And we have to recognize that this choice is going to be really fundamental for the future of the country. That whereas previous elections might have been about the past, and they might have been about, well, how do we punish people for their behavior or what we think has gone wrong, the next election is very, very much about the future. It's very, very much about what kind of government are we going to have, how are we going to deal with the real challenges that we face, and how are we going to make things better in a practical way. Just to conclude, we had a very interesting morning this morning with Mr. Hughes and the coalition on housing and homelessness in the city, and I've commented to the group that the picture in people's heads about Victoria is outside Victoria, is of this sleepy little community on the edge of the ocean in which everything is green and good and there are no problems and there are no issues and it's all very comforting and comfortable. When you come here, you're facing suddenly a very different reality. You're facing a reality where people are struggling with issues, where the downtown is struggling to renew itself and to succeed, and where there are obviously a lot of people who are facing in their own lives huge challenges which our society is not effectively dealing with and not effectively helping. And this is a classic example of where we need to bring the three great areas, the three pillars, as Mr. Dion says. We have to bring them together, and we have to show people that in fact, if we're going to succeed in making Victoria greener, fairer, and richer, it's going to require a new approach of cooperation between governments, a new focus of leadership, a new effort to really deal with it. And so this policy mix that we're talking about is, I think, a very exciting one. It's not a magic formula. It's not an incantation. It's a direction that we think we need to go as a country. That it's a direction we feel we need to go as a party. And we're offering Canadians this choice. I suppose it would be easy enough for us to simply attack the government in place. In fact, on a different occasion, I'd be happy to do that, and I have a lot of fun doing it, and I enjoy doing it when I do it. But that's not really what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about why it's important for us to make this shift, and it's important for us to talk to Canadians about how exciting it is, and how important it is for the future of our communities, and how it isn't just about one thing. It isn't just about climate change. It isn't just about the environment. Somebody says to me, well, I'm not really into the environment. Or somebody says, I'm not really into this or that. I just say, no, this is a direction we need to go. It's good for business. It has to be good for business for us to succeed. We can't have policies in place in Canada that are anti-business if we're going to succeed as a country. That's not how our economy works in Canada. We have to have policies in place that are positive for growth, positive for investment, and positive for the economy. And yes, we have to have policies in place that are positive for social justice. And yes, we do have to deal with the sustainability challenge, which we've been leaving behind for too long.